the cloud.
All right, we should be good.
All right, let's kick it off. Let's go.
All righty. Welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for joining session 2.2 of our Tableau Coders Initiative series on the Embedding API offered by Tableau. Happy Friday, and we're glad you're kicking off your day with us. Zach, you want to go to the next slide?
Yep.
Just a quick reminder of who we are. I'm Kyle. I'm a Tableau Data Dev Ambassador, Tableau COE Engineering Lead, and you know us already. If you don't, you can watch the first session on YouTube where we talk about ourselves a little bit more. Zach, anything you want to add?
Nope, I'm Zach.
And welcome to the initiative. We like to go ahead and welcome everyone in every session, whether this is your first session or your seventh session, however many you've joined. We just want to remind you of our goal here, which is to teach others to code with Tableau APIs and developer tools while fostering a safe and friendly environment for users of all skill levels. And y'all were just networking while we were waiting to get started. So I think that's definitely working towards the goal here. So just a quick recap of our roadmap. Last year, in spring and summer, we did part one, where we focused on the REST API. All of those sessions are available on YouTube if you want to go back and review those, and on datatheories.com/Tableau Coders. We're currently in part two, focusing on the Embedding API. I'll recap session one in just a moment, and then we're going to move on later in the year, over the next several months, and talk about things like the metadata API and the extensions API, hyper API, and maybe some other things here and there, depending on what y'all want to see. So session one recap. So if you weren't with us 2 weeks ago, just a real high level overview of what we talked about. We introduced the Data Dev platform, and we'll plug that again in a minute, but we strongly recommend everyone check out tableau.com/developer. That will allow you to see all the documentation about all the APIs and developer tools that are available. But even more importantly, for our purposes, it'll allow you to sign up for your Dev Sandbox, which is a fully functional little site that you can use to test out anything and everything Tableau developer related. So strongly recommend, if you haven't done that, go out there and do that. We do walk through how to do that in session one. So if you want to go back and watch the video, we will walk you through that as well. In session one, we also configured our IDE, so our integrated development environment. Ours of choice is VS Code. We talk a little bit more about what an IDE is and what it does. And if you want to see the full discussion on that, you can go back to session one towards the beginning. And then the meat and bones of last session was really showing us some examples of what we could do with the embedding APIs and the various ways of embedding content. We went really fast on purpose to kind of show the art of the possible and where we're going to get you by the end of this series. We talked about iframes, using the embed code from sharing, and also a more fully interactive example of the embedding API. All right. So what's new in Data Dev? So before we get kicked off, we are a Data Dev tug, so we want to make sure and promote everything going on in Data Dev, in the Data Dev world. And Data Dev Day 2023 is coming up here very soon. Actually, it's 2 weeks from yesterday, June 15th, a Thursday. It's streaming from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. Pacific. So if you're in Eastern, that would be what, 11 to 5 a.m. to 5 p.m. on the East Coast, and then wherever you are, if you view this page, I think it'll show your time zone. Zach and I will both be presenting during this. I won't spoil the topics just yet, but if you want to see more of us, I don't know why you do that, but if you want to see us talk about other things Data Dev related, we will be doing some, I think, very interesting presentations on the 15th. So highly encourage you to go out to tableau.com/developer and register for Data Dev Day 2023. Let's code. Right. So at this point, I am going to pass it over to Zach. I'll try to keep an eye on the chat. Zach, you tell me if you prefer. Do you want people to use the chat, raise their hands, come off mute?
However, I don't care. Dealer's choice. If you got questions, you want to interrupt me, go ahead. I don't mind. You can throw them in the chat. You can raise your hand. You can shout them out at me. You can just start yelling. That's fine. I'm okay anyway. So we're going to start with some coding today. We're going to actually work together on HTML. We're going to focus on learning a little bit about HTML, what it does, some of the ways that you can code with it, and we're going to do a lot of this in a tool called CodePen. This is something that I definitely always recommend to people that are new to web development. It's really kind of the perfect place to start to code. There's a lot of things in here. So first thing we're going to do as a group is go ahead and open up CodePen.io. Now, if you've never used CodePen, like everything else, it's going to ask you to register. It's a very simple process. Just put your email in, give yourself a password. It is going to ask you to verify your email if you don't use like a Google or Facebook login. That I think, if I remember correctly, you can still go ahead and start creating things even without validating your email address. It just might lock down some of the features. So take a moment right now and, we're going to go in and create. So this should be the page that you see. Sign up. And then again, you have some options here. You can sign up with Google and Facebook. That'll probably be your fastest way to log in if you want to use that. Or you can sign up with an email. Go ahead and give yourself name, username, email, password. And while you're doing that, I'll explain a little bit about what CodePen is. So I'm going to log in just so I see kind of my stuff and kind of move ahead. And again, go ahead and register yourself. CodePen is kind of like a social network site for web developers. It's a place where you can quickly create and generate HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and then on the fly and as you code, see the results. This is pretty perfect for beginners because you don't have to worry about your local environment and having an IDE like we talked about last time. You don't have to worry about always kind of grabbing the files and linking them together and even things like just opening up your browser and stuff like that to see what's going on. It's all built in and feature focused and live. One of the best things about this too, like I mentioned, this is kind of a social platform. So my favorite thing about this product is just seeing what others have created. So right when you log into CodePen, you'll see these pages, and these are little bite-sized web components that people have created that you can very easily see the code and just kind of check them out. This is even, if you're a Tableau developer, if you're looking for design inspiration, this is a great place to go as well. So as an example, there's something here, delete button. I actually looked at this earlier. I like the style of this. So you can go to the delete button. It's going to show you, and we'll get into a little bit more about how this is set up, but it shows you the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript that create the item below. And what this person created was a little interactive button that when you hit delete, it does a cute little animation and deletes it, throws it in the trash can, fills it up. So cool stuff like that. And there's a lot of things in here, a lot of different examples. If I refresh, there might be some new things. Just see what we got here. Let's just see, here's some different toggle buttons where you can check these out and actually see how they work. And then again, you can go into the code view to see how they've been generated. Lots of cool things in here. Just trying to think if I can find something. Here's like a menu where you can go in here and see the menu, and it's got like a little drop down effect. And again, all of the code is available. And some of these are very simple. Some of them are actually pretty complex, like full little websites or, crazy stuff like this guy's built. This is probably like a Ken Flairledge type of person that works in the web sphere. So they built with code only this little 3D space globe model thing that you can drag around. So there's a lot of really crazy, innovative things out here. I would encourage you to check it out. Again, I really like the site. But hopefully by now, as I've explained that, you've created a CodePen account that you can start using. It may have taken you directly into what is called a pen. A pen is your little object that you're creating. If not, if you're looking at a page like this, you just go over here to pen, and then you can just click the pen button right there. And by default, you're going to get this kind of blank version of what I was showing earlier, where we've got canvases for HTML, for CSS, and for JavaScript. Today, we are focusing only on HTML. So a good way to just kind of move the noise is just go over here to this little drop down in HTML, and then just put maximize HTML. These are still here. We've got the option to drag them back in, but today we're just focusing on HTML. So it's good to move some of the stuff out of the way that we don't care about. Again, what is going to happen here is as we create things, so I'll explain what I'm doing here in a second. This is some text. You'll see it automatically provide a window and a preview of what I've coded down below. Is there any questions? Or you got the questions, Kyle? I mean, just, I guess, shout out anything you want me to answer. I'll just.
Yep, I'm watching the chat as well.
Cool. So again, this is how you would do this. You just put, this is some text, and just going to show you right below what we've got here. I could do different things and say this is some big text and close that. Oh, sorry, that's H1 is what I meant to put, not a header row. And this is some big text. So, just simple things I can put together, and you'll see them kind of pop up below. So that is CodePen. That's what we're going to use today and probably for the next couple sessions. We did introduce the IDE of using Visual Studio Code, and we probably will get back to that kind of as we go. But again, this is just a simpler, lower impact version of that, where you don't have to worry about your local environment. All of this is on the cloud, and you can also save these things. That's something I should probably mention. So the way you title this is, if we want to call this like sample code, we'll edit that. We'll call this sample code. That's how I would do that. And then I can just hit save. And then it creates my own little portfolio there where I've got this kind of saved to my own account. It does try to automatically save along the way, but I always, just like anything else, would recommend that you take the time to save it and give it a, your own name and things like that. So we're going to actually get started with some HTML. I'm going to clear this out so we can start talking about it. Now, just like normal, we're going to start with this, assuming and expecting that you don't have any HTML code knowledge and practice. So just kind of going from the beginning. Everything that you see when it comes to HTML typically is going to have these things called tags. So you notice what I was putting before. So this is a paragraph tag. This is one of the most common things that you would be using, where you'll put a P. The opening tag is always going to be a left bracket, the term or the object that it is, and then a close for that bracket. And then you're going to actually type something out. So this is a paragraph. And then I'm going to close it. And the closing of a tag is typically the same thing. You're just going to have your slash here, and that's how you close one of these tags. Now, these elements so this is an element, all this is an element. I brought this up just to kind of explain this. I think it's better to see this visually. So an HTML element is the entirety of this whole kind of starting tag, ending tag, and everything in between. So the one that we just did with the paragraph, we had the start tag, that was the P. We had the end tag, that was the P at the end. And then there's a couple other things that you can have in here. So the content was what I just showed, where we said this is a paragraph. And then also in a lot of these, and we'll show some examples, you're going to have an attribute and a value. So some of these elements are very simple. They don't have any real attributes that you're going to be adding. Some of them typically will. Think of things like a image where you're going to call out what image you actually want to use in there, or a URL where you want to actually call out what the URL is that you're going to be using. So let's go back over here. Let's see, where do I want to go next? I have not practiced this yet, so I'm just trying to see what I want to go through first. Okay, so I'm going to start showing just a couple examples here. So we talked through a paragraph tag. What else do we want to go through? So there are a couple things that you typically want at the top of an HTML file. So pretty much any file that you ever see is going to be started with a doc type. And this just tells your file what kind of document it is. So this is going to be different based on whether you're using HTML or something else. Usually the next line that you're going to have is your HTML language. So this is telling it that I'm using, that I want this to be using the language of English US. And then usually after that, we'll start with kind of like the head tag. Now, HTML doesn't really care how you do your spaces, how you do your line breaks and things like that inside of here. It's really just looking for the tags themselves. It's going to typically understand how you set this up. If you ever get to a point where, especially here in CodePen, you don't really know if you're doing the right formatting. So let's say I've got, I'll close this head real quick. I'll explain what these do here in just a second. Let's just say I start doing some weird stuff in paragraph and close that. You'll notice it is kind of trying to correct me on where I put my indentations, things like that. But if you ever get a little off track and don't know exactly how you want to clean this up, there is a little option up here in the arrows where you can say format HTML. And it's going to kind of give you some kind of best practices as far as how you do the indents and the line breaks and the alignment, things like that. So back to where I was going. So talking a little bit about this head. So the head one is, this is kind of calling out some of the properties of your file. It's also used typically where you would put the title of your page. The title is going to be what you see up here inside of your tab. I'm not going to fill this in. I just want to call this out that it is best practice. This whole kind of area, and mostly these two top are called boilerplate. So if you hear Kyle or I talk about boilerplate code, these are the things that are kind of required inside of a HTML file. Going a little further, there are some other things that you typically are going to have. So I would have a body. The body is where you're going to have most of the content inside of your HTML file. You would have like the content itself within the body. So again, you kind of got this boilerplate stuff up here, you have your head, and then the body is most of the content itself. Now, you'll probably notice, based on where I was going before, that I'm not closing some of these things. Some of them, like the doc type, are self-closing tags. That means I don't have to do a separate tag. But HTML is one of those where I should close that. So I'll go down here and I'll close my HTML tag. Again, you'll see it's kind of understanding, all right, it's matching the indentation of this up here. And, I can put that together like that. And again, most of my stuff that I'm actually going to build the content is going to go here within the body. So we've got our doc type, our HTML, our head, and then body. Body is where we spend most of our time typically when you're kind of coding, especially in simple pages. There's a lot of different attributes, elements that you can use in here. There's things for paragraphs, headings. I mentioned the head. I showed the example of the H1. You have options for H1 through H6 of different heading levels. Typically, you don't want more than like one H1, which is your biggest level, your highest font. So this is a major header, and that's one. And then, just to show an example of the difference, if I do like an H4, this is a minor header. And I can show, that there. You will notice that it is working without me closing these tags, but it is a best practice to always close your tags, or have closing tags rather, just to make sure that regardless of the browser, that it's going to understand exactly what you've got in there. So that's some basics about HTML. Now we're going to get into actually coding a couple examples. So one thing I wanted to show was last week, or two weeks ago, when Kyle showed some examples, there were a few that he showed. One was a silly Simpsons example. So what I did want to highlight is you can grab pieces of code, whether they come from us that we provide to you, or whether they come from other CodePen IO boards or pens. You can easily grab those and drop them in. So that's what I'm going to do. I have a copy of Kyle's code from last week with some slight modifications. Let's just see. All right, so this is about what Kyle had before. Very easy to make.
The differences are so subtle. I barely noticed.
I think it's pretty much the same as the Simpsons one you had. So very easily we can modify these things and put something that's a little more apt. Like Kyle is a big stinky dumb head, and nobody gets your Simpsons references, and you made a yellow site upset. So yeah, very easy to grab those over. Really all I did was I grabbed his page And again, this is a little bit more advanced, some of the stuff that he's got in here. So he's got some things like meta tags. These are things to help you with, marketing your site, putting it on Google and browser kind of best practices, things like that. We have the title that we had mentioned. Again, some of these meta names that just help with SEO kind of stuff. And then we've got things like he's got a link here, and the link has a lot of attributes. So the href is the hyperlink reference. It shows what we're kind of linking to. This is the type of item is a style sheet. We're not going to get into this yet because the styling doesn't really matter here. But then there's other things like body, and you can tell that he's added some attributes that make some of these things change. So in the body that I showed, it was just body open, close. In the body that he's showing, he's adding a style, and the style equals background color, and it's this hideous yellow color that he selected. So, probably wouldn't use this color because it's terrible. But thank you, Kyle, for showing us what not to do. So going forward, we got different things. I'm really not going to get too far into like divs and classes today because I think that gets a little bit more confusing. But think of it whenever you're getting further into styling things and building real websites. And when we start talking about CSS, it's going to make more sense. But these divs, these classes, these titles, things like that help you to align them to your CSS, and where you can say, okay, anything that is an H1 has this characteristic. Anything that's a horizontal role has this characteristic. There's different things like that. So lots of stuff there. And then again, these are very simple iframes. This was his example of simple iframes. I didn't go through the effort to log in, but these would work if I was signed into Tableau Cloud. So the last thing on here is there is a script here that he's got. This is a bootstrap minified JS. We will talk about that next session when we get a little bit into extending these libraries and extending CSS. Don't use that too much in just basic HTML. I'll kind of pause there to see if there's any questions that we've got that before we get into a better example. I think we're probably good. I'm going to just.
I did send I'll send it again. I did send, you were talking about the tags. I'm going to send the link again. It's a basic list of tags. It's not all encompassing. But if you want to get a sense of like some of the options that are out there, most of them are pretty straightforward, but probably good to just kind of look through what we'll be working with in the next, in the coming sessions. And then I will also say, that is the first time I've seen Zach's improvements to that page, and I agree. I support you, Zach, always.
Cool, good. You should. This is a good time to remind everyone we haven't done it yet today. I am Kyle's boss, so he has to accept everything that I say always. Thanks for sharing this, Kyle. One thing that I would say, like Kyle mentioned, there are tons of HTML tags. Usually most of what you're going to do is in about 10% of them. So these are probably some of it says the most common. So, things like a paragraph, I mentioned the different header levels. Strong is kind of a way of like bolding it. And there's different things in here that you can use. We're not going to get into a lot of these things. We will talk a little bit about lists and tables here shortly. So going back to our sample code, I'm going to clear this out because it's hideous and the yellow's starting to give me a headache. And we're going to start to build something together. So if you haven't started to actually code anything, this is your opportunity to build alongside us. So what we're going to start working on together is a very simple personal resume that can show some of our Tableau work. And we're going to build this together. We're going to make it custom so you can kind of put your own dimensions and things in here. So whatever. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead with the boilerplate stuff. And we'll start with doc type. And again, we're going to do that doc type of HTML. A good opportunity probably to remind you, go ahead and give this a name, sample code, or most awesome, amazing thing ever, or Zach is better than Kyle, whatever you want to call it. I don't mind any of them. Fine. The last one's probably the best one. And then you can save this and then move on. So we've got our doc type. Next thing we're going to do is give it some HTML language stuff. So we'll call this equals and US One thing I will mention that you don't get in CodePen that you would get in like an IDE, like what Kyle was mentioning, is things like autocomplete. That is one thing that is kind of a pain here in CodePen. Is typically you're gonna have to write everything out. I think that is a good practice when you're beginning, just because you don't really want it to fill things out for you. You want to try and figure it out yourself, get it put in. Once you get a little bit more advanced and some more experience, then I think it's better to rely on things like that. Next thing we've got our head that we mentioned. And then inside of head, we're going to do a title. So I mentioned that was kind of a good practice here. Now, there's different ways you can type these. If you don't want to lose track of the way that, of closing tags, you can go ahead and just do your closing tag right after, and then we can kind of do something between them. That's sometimes a good thing, especially when you're getting started, because then you don't forget it. If I get into a habit of just opening and then working through and then closing later, that's just because I've been using HTML for a long time. So title here, we'll just call this is a great, let's call it a super great page. And we've got that. Now, the spacing here doesn't matter too much again. And again, you can always go over here and say format and just see what it does. It's fine with what I've got, so I'm not going to make any changes. The next thing I'll highlight that we haven't talked about is comments. So it's always good to comment your code. You'll notice all the code that Kyle shared, there was no comments, not great. So anytime, especially if if it starts to become, big and something you want to call out and show with others, it's good to call things out that you're kind of explaining as you go. So to do a comment here in HTML, you're going to do kind of an opening bracket on the left side, exclamation point, and then 2 lines. And then anything between that and a close of that, which is two hyphens in the right bracket, is going to be a comment. So I can say this is a comment. You'll see it gets a different color. Or I can say, let's start working on the body. And this is going to work, if I do some line breaks there, more comments, anything I do in between there is going to be commented out. And you can tell that just again by the different color. And this is really for us. This is not going to be something that's run along the way. It's not going to show up when we actually start to build up some things. So next thing we'll do is we're going to start in the actual content itself. So here's where we do that body that we'd mentioned. And then let's go ahead and do an H1 just to start our page. And this is where you can plug in your own name. I'm going to just say Zach Geis interactive resume. And then we'll close H1. And now we've got, a nice H1 that we can see up here. It's reminding me to save. I'll go up here and hit save. And we can continue to move forward. So let's give it kind of a subheader here, maybe like an H3. And yes, Zach is the best, or at least better than I. Yes, that was coming, didn't we? All right, and then we'll close that H2. All right. And yes, Zach does have unclosed. So my HTML is not closed.
Yeah, the question was why is, and neither, and body isn't either. The question was the red exclamation. Right. So CodePen, like Zach said, is HTML is a very permissive language. It will try to make sense out of whatever you've done. But CodePen is saying, hey, you have some issues still.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's different ways you can actually check some of these. You can actually analyze HTML. And if you hit analyze, it's going to say, okay, what are you doing? And so here's an example where I started with an H3 and then I ended with an H2. It's saying that doesn't make any sense. And then when we try and save it now and we try and analyze it again, it's going to say, oh, wait, there's no issue. So that's all. Also it's a good highlight. I totally did that on purpose so we could show you what errors look like in code. All right, so we've got the body, we've got the HTML, we've got the H3, and now let's go ahead and we're going to add a horizontal rule. So a horizontal rule is a self-closing tag, and this is a very simple one. It just kind of adds a line. So you want to give yourself kind of some breakage in here. These are also useful because you can format these lines differently. So you could give them, a big certain gradient in the background, things like that. Very easy to do things like that. The next thing we'll do is let's add an image. So I'm going to go down here and I'm just going to say image source equals, I'll close that out. I'm going to do a height in here. Again, this is an attribute. So I'm going to give this 200. And then another very important attribute for images is an alt attribute. And an alt attribute is kind of the text that you get when you hover over things. It also helps it well with screen readers, accessibility, things like that. So in here, I'm just going to say, Zach, this is going to be just a picture of ourselves for our resume. And then I'm going to close this out. Now, the most important part of this is the source attribute. So we want to grab that. What I'm going to do is we want to find something that's online. This would work if we had a local file. We want to bring it into CodePen or use a local IDE. That would be fine. I'm just going to go into my LinkedIn, and you can always use your link back to your LinkedIn image by going to the actual image itself. Come on. And then if you right click it, you'll see copy image address, and you can see all my crappy salesman people reaching out to me over here. So go back over to the sample code, and then I'm just going to paste that in. And we should see beautiful picture pop up right after that. So we got a nice image in here. Again, I just went to my LinkedIn, clicked in until you get to the point where you can modify your profile picture and then copy the image address. And then I plug that in here into the image source. So now I've got my H1, my H3, a horizontal rule, and an image embedded in here. The next thing I want to do is I don't just want my image. I'd say let's give them a way to check me out on LinkedIn. I could add a hyperlink from the image, but just to highlight another example, I'm going to do two of these elements together. I'm going to do, let's say, an H4, and best practice. Let's just go ahead and close it out so I don't forget. And then within the H4, I'm going to do a hyperlink. And so hyperlink tag is an A tag, and it's a hyperlink reference equals. We'll go ahead and just leave a placeholder for that. And then this closes out. And then we do have a close for the A tag. And then anything in between here, and just so we can clear this up and read this a little bit easier for you guys. Again, H4, A. Anything in between the A and the A tag is what we're going to show us the text. So I'll say, check out my LinkedIn. And we'll see that it does have a link, but there's nothing actually here yet. So this one, I'm just going to go back to my actual LinkedIn, grab, click into my profile, grab this link, go back over here, and then I'm going to plug that right here into the href for the attribute for href. And now when I try this, I hover over, you can see down there below, it's linking back to my LinkedIn page. So we've got, some stuff going on here with our resume. We're getting a little bit further. Let's go ahead and just split this section up again. So we'll do a horizontal rule. And again, we'll do it just like that. Give it a second. See it kind of come to life. Good opportunity to save. And then let's do a little bit about ourselves. So after this HR, we'll go ahead and do another H3. And we'll say about me. And you guessed it, we close that tag. All right. Lindsay's slowing us down. So we'll give her a second. Not a surprise, it's Lindsay. So it's fun to not only have to make fun of Kyle, I've got other people I can make fun of on the line. Make sure, Lindsay, so if we look at this image source, so we got img srec equals, you got a height in here. You should make sure you've got kind of your closing bracket. And then again, the best way to get the link for this is to go all the way into LinkedIn to where you get this part where you can edit your profile picture. and then right click. Oh, you missed the height part. Okay, so I think you're good. And just to close that out, you want to copy the image address right here. Right. So moving forward, so about me, we've got that. So H3 and anybody that's catching up, after we did the image, we did an H4, and inside the H4 we did the aref. I will save this and make this available. We'll also probably put this on our GitHub just so you guys can check that out. So if you do get stuck a little bit along the way, that's totally fine. We'll give you guys the code that you can catch up with. But we did the H4. Inside of that, we did a link, an A tag. You make sure that you have in the A tag a attribute for href, hyperlink reference. And then that would be the link to your primary LinkedIn page. And then you do want to close with a closing tag. And then in between the two, the opening and the closing of the tag, you want to have the text that you want to link. So LinkedIn, check out my LinkedIn. Then after that, we did another horizontal rule. And then finally, we did an H3 and we just put about me. Now, the next thing we'll do after this H3 is we're going to do something new called an unordered list. So there's a couple of different things in here, an ordered list and unordered list, very similar. An unordered list is just things with the, you've got your kind of your dots that represent everything. Everything's kind of the same level. An ordered list is something like 1, 2, 3 or ABC. So an unordered list, very simple. We start this off with a UL unordered list. I'll go ahead and close this so we've got that there and I don't forget. And then within the unordered list, we give it list items. So, excuse me. So we go in here, list items are just very simple as well. List item, and then we'll close that list item like that. And I'm going here and say a little bit about me. This is me. So this is an opportunity you kind of put your own thing. I'll put Tableau Visionary. All right. So you can see it popping up down here about me, Tableau Visionary. And we're just kind of fill in a couple things about ourselves. So I'm a data dev ambassador. Close that. I'm a COE leader. Maybe just one more. Better than Kyle. Okay. So there we go. And then again, we've got kind of the end of the unordered list below it. And we scroll down here, we can start to see that. Good time to show there's different ways you can kind of move things around here. You can also move these things to the left and right. I forget how to do that. I think it's up here, change view. There's different options in the view here. So you can put these to the left, see it to the right, whichever works best for you. Once you start to get further into the code, it probably is a little bit better to do left and right because you can see a little bit more. So I might leave it like that so you guys can see the code a little bit better. All right, so we did our unordered list. We're almost wrapped up with this for today. Let's go ahead and do another horizontal rule. And these are just, the only reason we're doing these is just give kind of clear distinction, delineation between the sections. Now, the next thing we're going to do is a simple Tableau embed. Now, this part's going to get a little bit more complicated. Well, I'm not going to explain exactly what's happening here with this, but we are going to get into this further over the next couple lessons. But we do want to add the Tableau link inside of our, Tableau embedding class. So what we're going to import next is a script. So this is something, just kind of copy this along. So script, and we want the type to be module. And this is a script attribute module or type, sorry. We want our source, and our source is going to be, we have a chat. Yeah, so I'm gonna actually put this link in here so you guys don't have to worry about typing this word for word. Oops. Copy that, put it over here into the chat. All right, so that's going to be your source for this. And then after that, you close this and then close your script tag. So paste in the link that I put in there into source right here. And what this is linking to is there is typically on any Tableau server, and that includes Tableau Online and Tableau Public, a copy of their embedding API. and we need to kind of tell our HTML where we want to reference these script commands that we're calling. And so we're basically telling it, when I start to use this, start calling it from this script. Okay. There's going to be the next thing is going to be a Tableau component of this. So again, don't need to know exactly what I'm doing here. We'll explain it further as we go, but we're going to do Tableau-biz. We'll do an ID, and the ID is going to be Tableau-biz source, and we'll leave that just as I've been doing, kind of blank, and we'll come back to this. And we can give it some sizes here. The sizes kind of are just up to you. I'm going to embed one of my own dashboards. So if you grab one of yours and kind of plug it in here and it feels weird as far as the sizing, very easy to just play with these sizes. But I'm going to do a width of 1000 and then a height of 1000. And always good, I don't know if I mentioned this before, but when you're putting the values for these attributes, they typically always should be in quotations like this. So we go, and then there's some different parameters you can call out here. You can hide the tabs. We'll say, I got this. Hide tabs toolbar equals hidden. And that's the only ones I'm going to do for this one. We'll go ahead and close that Tableau biz. So again, the only reason Tableau biz works is we're calling it from the script up above. Otherwise, if we didn't have this part in here, this wouldn't mean anything. It doesn't understand how to kind of call those through. So we've got this. The only thing that we didn't grab here is the URL to actually embed. So I'm going to go, I've got my Tableau open up here, and we can go up here to our profile. And this will work with anything on Tableau Public. It doesn't have to be yours if you don't have anything readily available. But I'm just going to grab one of my URLs. I'm going to use this one. This is the example I was playing with earlier. And this is very important. Do not just grab the URL from up here. I think Kyle mentioned this in the previous sessions. You always want to use the URLs down here. So again, don't do that. Go down to your little embed or share icon rather. And inside of this, we've got a link, and we want to grab that link and put that inside of our sample code. So grab that. We want to put that right here in our source. Paste that in. You should start to see some Tableau stuff rendering in a resume. So I'll move this over a little bit so we can see it. So again, it doesn't look great. That's what we're going to work on in the next subsequent lessons. But it does have the content. So we've got some headers here, an image of ourselves, a link to our LinkedIn, some about me information, and then a link to a Tableau dashboard. And this is interactive. This is just a version of Tableau kind of embedded here. And that's really it for this. What we're going to do next is we'll get into CSS. So CSS is really where we style things. That's what I don't want you to think that this is kind of the end result. This is really just bringing in the content. As we talked about last session, the HTML is really like building. The CSS is where you start to apply the paint, the formats to the house and the coloring styles. Just giving it character, things like that. That's what we're going to focus on next. I think, let's see if this will work, because I think, at least Lindsay may be having some challenges, maybe some others. Let's see if this works. I'm going to bet that it won't. It's probably too much, but pasting that. Oh, it did work. So if you don't have it working and you want to grab the code, I just plugged it right into the chat. So you can just copy that right in. You probably will want to change it to some of your own personal information, but you guys need a copy of the code to plug into your stuff. You can certainly do that. That is all the code for today. Let's go over here. And let's talk a little bit about next session. Kyle, you made me do most of the work. It's your turn.
Sure. So no, thanks, Zach. That was great. Hopefully everyone was able to follow along, but again, we'll get this posted ASAP. Feel free to reach out on Twitter or LinkedIn, either one. We're happy to look at what you've got. So as for our next session, to make a point here, we are doing these for the most part bi-weekly. Zach thinks he deserves to go on a vacation in a couple weeks for whatever reason. So we're actually going to have our next session be on June the 30th. We like sticking with Fridays. So we're just going to move that to actually 4 weeks from now. So June 30th. The event is already out on usergroups.tableau.com, so you can go ahead and RSVP now. And in the next event, like Zach said, we're going to start putting some paint on the house. We built the frame and moved in like the most basic appliances inside of our house. And next time we're going to start putting some art on the walls. We're going to start making it look really pretty, and everyone in the neighborhood will be jealous. And so we'll keep working on this interactive resume example. That's kind of what we're going to take from start to finish here. Zach talked a little bit about it in the formerly Simpsons example, a little bit about CSS frameworks. So once we go through some of the examples, kind of to Zach's point earlier, using CodePen is an advantage for beginners because you kind of have to do it yourself, and it gets you best practices of closing tags and things like that. Same with CSS. We'll show you the basics of what you should know how to do on your own. And then we'll give you a little bit of an intro into things called CSS frameworks like Bootstrap, which came up in that example, and Tailwind is another popular one. And these are essentially shortcuts in CSS that can help you do things just by using little names for sets of attributes that can be much quicker. So instead of setting padding on all sides, I can just say P-4, or if I just want it on top and bottom, I can say PY2. But that'll make more sense next time around. And then what we're also going to do, we said we were going to do it this time, but as we were planning this out, it made a little bit more sense to be part of the next session. Tableau has this new tool that they've released called the Embedding Playground. Actually, I think they changed the name again. But what it is it's a tool that allows you to really plug in a visualization and start building some of the code that you need to embed it automatically. So you can see what Zach has. Oh, could you go back for just a second there? So you can see on the right in those darker boxes at the bottom, that's exactly what Zach just did. So, and on the left, it's get a little bit more, you don't necessarily need all of this for that simple example, but we'll start to play around with this as we transition to further sessions when we start talking about JavaScript and how to take advantage of both things to make your page do cool stuff and how to have it interact with your Tableau content.
Awesome.
So Zach, I think that might have been the last slide.
Yep. I think we're ready for any sort of questions. If you guys got a drop, appreciate your time and thanks for joining us. Hope you got something out of the session, and we're here for the next 10 minutes if you have questions for us.
And feel free to just come off mute too, if that's easier for you.
Hey, I have a question. So if I wanted to, can you embed something that's not on Tableau Public if it was like on my own organization's internal server, like our okay, because I tried to do that and it doesn't. I don't know if it's a security thing or what.
That was going to be the caveat that I was going to mention. Is it depending on how you're embedding, where you're embedding. So like for example, SharePoint. If that's or things like that where you can just kind of bring in little web components and drop some code in and have it be part of a larger thing. Sometimes admins will have restrictions on what you can import, like in terms of scripts and things like that. So if it's just like not rendering, or you're getting an error saying it was blocked by some, like usually you'll see like CORS, which is cross origin security. That would be a conversation to have with like the admins of wherever you're trying to embed it.
Okay, well, I think, so, Kyle, just to be clear, it's the CodePen probably doesn't have access to your internal organization.
That's also true. That is also true. Yes.
Got it.
Yeah. So if you had, it has to be kind of a public. So long as CodePen can access it, then it wouldn't be an issue. But since you probably have some security firewalls and things like that, it can't reach into your firewall to get access to the Tableau content. Now, if you hosted something internally, it wouldn't be CodePen, but kind of what we've talked about with like doing files, you would be able to do that.
Okay, so if I just took this and put it in like Visual Studio, and then publish it to like, I don't know, one of our internal servers that does have access. It should work. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
I posted a question about where did you get the JS script, the module?
Yeah, that was, so if you go, I posted both the code and up above. So that code is basically typically on any Tableau server, as long as they have this accessible. That's let me share. Can you see this? The chat screen when I share it?
No,
No,
we still
okay.
just see the question slide. But
Okay.
hey, real quick, Rika, your script tag is misspelled. You have, so if you change the spelling of your opening script tag, I think that'll fix your issue.
Okay, where?
You have SCRIPTR. So if you just change that, fix that spelling, I think that'll fix your.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And then the question before that, so this is the script type. So kind of what I was saying. So this is, I'm grabbing from public.tableau.com. This is the embedding JavaScript is typically accessible on any Tableau server unless they specifically turn that off. And so like in the example earlier where we're talking about connecting to an internal Tableau server, you would just swap out the public.tableau.com with your internal server, and then you could be pulling it from there. But it doesn't necessarily, you don't necessarily have to pull the JavaScript from the same place that you're embedding from. You're really just pointing to a library, and the library should be pretty consistent across the servers.
Okay.
The only other thing just to add to that one is there are some differences in the naming of the JS files depending on what server version you're on. So if you're like a few versions behind internally, check out tableau.com/developers and go to the documentation for embedding, and it will show you by server version what JavaScript file you should import.
Cool. Okay, thanks.
Hey guys, do you have any, I don't know, maybe on this particular website for CodePen, but other, similar maybe examples that we can kind of go into the underlying code for resume and like, just like personal websites in addition to this? Have you seen any others that are pretty, maybe a little bit more advanced, but I'm just looking at different like design ideas and things and like how to manipulate HTML. I'm sure you guys are probably going to be offering some maybe like, templates or things in the future, but I'm just thinking about things about like customizing like look and feel, font choices, things like that.
Yeah, the three examples that we went over in the last session are all available in at github.com/kjmassey.
Okay, I'll go there.
Like embedding. Yeah, you'll see inside of it, you'll see like iframe, share, embed, and each one of those is kind of a different look and feel website. One of them's the Simpsons thing, one of them's meant to look like a Confluence, one of them's meant to look like a little like a portal with different expanders and things. So I think that might give you a sense of like how different things work and interact.
Yeah, because I'm like, so right now I've had in forever draft mode a resume that I've been thinking about putting onto Tableau, but I'm actually thinking about using this as an opportunity to not just do embedding, but actually do some stuff within HTML within a website. So I'm just looking at like all the possibilities of what I can do. Oh, okay. Looks like I think Kyle or Zach, I don't know who's guiding the screen.
That's
here.
me.
It
Yeah.
looks like there's a couple of things here that look interesting. Yeah, that's very cool.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely, you can find things like this where people built like nice little interactive resumes on here with all this kind of stuff, like little,
Okay, that's fun.
Like, so yeah, I mean, obviously you're getting a lot more heavy into this stuff.
Yeah.
You can see there's a lot of stuff going.
Yeah.
But you can, there are
Sure.
simpler things. So why did that not refresh? There are simpler ones when you look at this, like here's somebody and this is pretty simple. They've done a little bit more with kind of some of the background, but
Yeah.
it's one of those things. I think it's good to iteratively grow when it comes to HTML, CSS.
For sure. No, I think that somebody, I don't know who it was up in the tab, it might have been Dawn, posted something about the W3 schools HTML. I feel like I need to put on my early 2000s like Zanga blog cap again, because I did have a Zanga back in the day, and I'm pretty sure that I used to dabble in HTML. It just seems like long gone since like 2004. So I'm sure that there's plenty more out there. But thank you guys again for today. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Lindsay, I'm not sure if you're still on or if you saw my message, but yeah, a space can literally ruin everything. We had our Scrum team used to be called Space Force because we spent like a day debugging something that all came down to a stray space.
That was totally the issue. I was like,
Yeah.
and then suddenly everything popped. I'm like, oh look, there I am, and there's all the
That's
things. I was following along, but nothing was showing up. So that was great. Thanks.
Awesome. Glad it was
Lots
something
learned.
simple.
Yeah. That wasn't too far off.
All right,
Yeah,
folks, we
couple
got 2 more minutes. Any other last minute questions? Going once. Going twice. All right, I think that's it.
Yeah. Thank you so much, everybody. As always, if you think of things after the fact or you just want to have a more personal conversation, we're both open to that. Hit us up on Twitter. We're happy to help you along. And we will see you in 4 weeks on June the 30th.
Hi, guys. Have a good one. See
Have a
you
good one,
soon.
everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Guys.